Hi, I'm Gabby, and welcome to Gabbing with Gabi. In this series, we sit down with fellow artists who brought their knowledge and talent to the world via the internet. It's a chance for them to put down their brushes, step away from their easels, and to talk about themselves. And it's also a great chance for all of us to get to know them better. Our guest today is David. David, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's David Brancato. I've been painting for about 5 or 6 years now. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in animation that I got from the Ringling College of Art and Design. That was in 2013. Almost forgot what year it is. About 10 years ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot. I taught myself how to paint after I graduated because we didn't really do much of painting. It was all computer based, on the Cintiqs and everything, and in Maya and all that, 3D stuff. Before that, I really didn't have much of a history of painting. I had tried, but as we'll uncover soon enough, I never thought I could paint. So, yeah, funny how things happen.
Yeah. What made you pick up a paintbrush?
My grandparents. We had grown up watching Bob Ross on TV, Bill Alexander. What was the other one? Jenkins, I think. He watched all of those and recorded them on VHS so that we could play them back. And he liked to paint. Well, he was a musician first and foremost, but he liked to paint a lot, and he was inspirational to me. So was my aunt, who were both oil painters, but they never really did anything with it. And so when flash forward a few years, they're not around anymore. I was sitting down with my fiance at the time, and we were watching Netflix, and Bob Ross was right there on the front and center. So we just started to play it, and I got inspired to just go and get certified to teach. So I got a bunch of the supplies, easel, canvas, paint, brushes. I just goofed around with it for a little while until I could go to Florida. I was living in California at the time. I got certified, and it's sort of like an homage to their memory, right? Like, I feel like it's something I did to honor them. And I also really wanted to learn how to paint. So it was kind of like a two-in-one deal.
Do you think that they would be proud of you?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would be.
Yeah.
They never, like my grandfather. Okay, so my grandmother never. She wasn't an artist. She's a pianist. She taught me how to play the piano a long time ago. But my grandfather liked to dabble in paint. Sorry for the pun. But he did that. But he never really followed Bob. He just liked to sit and watch. So I figured I should do it myself. Why not? So I did. And that was my first real experience with paint. And I developed my own style. But I've been drawing. Don't get me wrong. I have not just picked this up 5 or 6 years ago. I've been painting, not drawing. I've been drawing since I was in second grade. And drawing really helps you understand. Like I was saying before, I never knew how to paint. I never thought that I could paint. And it's only because I hadn't discovered oils yet. Drawing, I could move it around. I could erase it. I could shift it around. Acrylics and watercolor don't really let you do that. And I never really had any formal training, so I used to think it wasn't my thing until I figured out that I could do all of those things with oil paint, and here we are.
Yeah, that's pretty much me too. Absolutely. Let's see. So you want to tell us a little bit about the type of art that you do, specifically the subjects?
Well, Bob Ross, of course. His techniques are very unique. I guess they're a combination of Bill Alexander's and his, because Alexander was his mentor. But there's that, and that's very specific. That's very outlined and organized, and you can't really deviate from it if it's a Bob Ross painting. He did encourage people to go off and do their own thing and take it and use it as a stepping point for bigger and better things, which is kind of what I did. As soon as I learned how to use the paint, as soon as I learned how to handle the paint, I couldn't help myself. I just started to draw with the paint. It took me about a month or two to figure it out, and then I started, I think the first thing I painted was a portrait of Bob, sort of like just a test to see if I could do it. And it came out pretty well. So.
Oh, awesome. And what do you focus on more now? Do you focus on landscapes or anything else?
I don't really know. That's just when I'm teaching those classes.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that I'm going to be doing a lot more of them because I've been getting requests to do videos. So I think what I'm going to do is have more of like a modular approach to the videos, just like mountains, skies, trees, things like that. Because that's kind of how you put a Bob Ross painting together. It's just kind of a modular thing. You figure out where you're going to put your trees, your mountains, your bushes, your sky, what your clouds are going to look like. and you can take it and go from there. And I think that's good as far as teaching someone how to paint, because you can have them copy you, but you can also encourage them to, you know, have their own imagination and have their own kind of vision for things, and give them the building blocks to put it together, and then, you know, let them go. So I think that's how I'm going to approach those videos. But I also do my own thing, and my own thing is very realistic. I don't have, like I said, I don't have much painting training. I kind of figured it out on my own, but a lot of it came from knowing how to draw in the first place. I've been drawing since I was, like I said, I think it was 2nd or 3rd grade. It's been a while, but it's really, it's been something that's always been there for me. And I've had a lot of trouble in other subjects. I'm not good at math at all. I'm terrible. I'm the world's worst mathematician, but at least I can paint, I can draw, so I'm okay. I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. We all have our talents. Math isn't always one of them.
No, definitely not mine.
So you teach, do you want to talk a little bit about teaching, I guess?
Well, sure. I teach Bob Ross. I'm CRI, so I teach the landscapes. I'm certified in all 3, floral, wildlife, and landscape. But my own classes are very, very far removed from that. It's basically more of a traditional, classical approach to painting, where I just teach basic grisaille at first, basically learning how to handle the paint, how to understand value structure, how to compose, you know, how to compose a painting and how to actually handle the paint, learn how to mix the correct values, put them where they need to go. It's very realistic, very structured, and very methodical. I teach anybody how to do it. It's just a matter of understanding the focus. You know, the focus is not just to splatter paint around. You know, it's very different from what Bob was teaching, because Bob was very, you know, spur of the moment. Where's it going to be? Make the decision right then and there. But the way I teach my own style is very structured, and there's a method to it. And you go through very, very slowly at first. You learn how to do the grisaille, which is basically black and white. And it's a basic, I don't know, still life or something simple. I never throw people right into like a portrait or something. That would be too much at first, because then you're worried more about the likeness, and oh my gosh, it doesn't look like this person, and I can't focus anymore because it doesn't look anything like him. And doing random things like fruit, for example, like an apple or a pear, is very, very good for the beginner, because, you know, a pear can be any shape. It doesn't matter if it's fatter or thinner than the real thing. It doesn't make any difference as long as you get the value structure correct. Because without the value structure, the painting doesn't work. The image doesn't work. It has to feel. You have to be able to feel the weight of the pear, whatever it is. And all of that has to do with the lighting. So it's about paying attention to texture, lighting, all of those things, and learning how to manipulate the paint to represent what you're trying to represent. Mm-hmm. After that, I go into color. I teach a 5-color palette. So it's basically a red, excuse me, a red, a blue, yellow, white, and brown. Those 5 colors. That's it. So I can pretty much mix anything in the natural world, minus a few things like really bright saturated flowers, things like traffic cones. You know, that orange. That's very, very particular, very specific. You need special colors for things like that. But if you're just painting, you know, a person, you know, portraiture, unless they've got something like a teal necklace, you know, something very bright and saturated, you can mix it with 5 basic colors, and taking away most of the available options, because I know it can be confusing with so many hundreds of colors. You know, you go to the store or whatever, you look online and you're like, oh my gosh, there's hundreds of reds and hundreds of blues and different brands and things like that. And oh my gosh, it's overwhelming. So I try to take all of that out and focus on one primary, or one of each primary, and then the white and the brown, because it's necessary for the brown to make black. I don't use black pigment. Well, I can't say I never use a black pigment, but I'll use a black if my blue and brown can't make a dark enough black. So I use ultramarine blue, I use burnt umber. The two of them together make it's like 95% pure black. So in areas where I need to get darker than that, like in cracks and crevices, I'll grab an ivory or something. But I never mix black pigment into the color. I just don't do that. From there, you know, those are the basics. After that, it's more about putting both concentrations together. So it's about handling the paint, mixing the colors, and then doing a full color painting of some sort. That's basically the structure of what I'm talking about. That's how I teach my classes.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. That's complicated, but
it sounds complicated, but it's not. It's really not. It's not like class is 4 hours, you know. This is longer than that. You're more invested, you know. Bob Ross classes tend to go 4 hours or so, maybe 3, and they're done.
Yeah.
This is not. This is way slower. This is like you're training yourself how to see things that you may not have even been aware of before.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What things do you think people need to learn if they are artists without formal education?
In terms of, okay, so elaborate on that a little bit.
Um, so you have some education in art, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your digital stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there's anything that you learned there that people aren't learning when they're not having a formal education that's necessary?
Well, it's like, it depends on what you're painting. For example, if you're painting Bob Ross paintings, you know, his techniques are grounded in wet on wet application. They use you know, he's got the palette. It's very systematic. It's tree equals, you know, this, and this. It's clouds equal this, and this. It's mountain equals this, and this. With classical painting and traditional, you know, academic painting, it's much different. It's about feeling it out and learning color theory. With and I'm using these two as examples so you can kind of get where I'm going with this. But
Mm-hmm.
with Bob Ross paintings, you don't need to understand color theory. You kind of do, but you don't, because you know that if you just want to do a basic Bob Ross painting, you need, you know, the the sap green, you need the cad yellow, you know, the cad yellow or cad yellow hue, whichever one. You need some white, you need some of the yellows, maybe some red, and that's it. You don't have to understand how to mix green, although you can. You know, you can use the Prussian, you can use the yellows, you can mix your own greens. But you know, in terms of classical understanding, you know, art, principles of art, that's about as far as you need to go. You need to understand a little bit about composition, but if you follow Bob's basic template, you can't really get it wrong. And if you know, you have to practice, of course. You know, the trees and the mountains and all that stuff takes practice. But that's hand-eye coordination. That's motor skills. You know, that's, you know, half of Bob's method is learning how to load the brush properly. You know, it's not all about painting, you know, putting the tree on the canvas. If your brush isn't loaded properly, it doesn't work. It doesn't matter how closely you follow his motions, it's not going to work right. So those kinds of things can apply to classical painting, but in classical painting, it's more important to understand complementary colors and how colors vibrate against each other. I think it's more important to understand value structure more. Bob's got basic value structure, okay, because you know that distant objects need to, like his foothills, for example. Take his foothills, for example. The further away they are, the lighter they need to be in value. So more white, more atmosphere, right? The closer they get, the less atmosphere is in between you and the object. So, or whatever it is, the trees or the foothills or the ground or the grass or whatever it is. So you're not seeing through as much atmosphere. So the colors are more vibrant. The colors are, you know, the shadows are deeper. Those kinds of things, that's visual. You know, that's what I mean by value structure. So you do kind of have to understand that. But what you're not getting, okay, so I guess you could look this stuff up on YouTube. You can look a lot of stuff up on YouTube these days and teach yourself. But what we're getting in terms of training is the rest of it, like composition, rule of thirds, things like the golden rule, the golden, you know, that spiral that dictates the way you divide it up in terms of strong composition, leading lines. Okay, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is what I'm talking about, because I understand what these things are, and some of you watching this might understand what I'm talking about. But if you don't know what leading lines are, tangents, you know, elements of composition that can strengthen or weaken your image based on how you apply them or how you don't apply them, you know, these types of things. If you scroll down, you know, any of these painting websites and you look through the paintings, you can you can train yourself to see these things, because you might look at a painting and you might think to yourself, that's good, I really like the way they handle the colors, and I really like the trees, and I like the way they executed the bushes. I think the technique is really good, but maybe the choice of color isn't quite where I would have gone with that. Or, you know, you have opinions. You know, I'm just rattling things off. That means you have taste. That means you know what you like, and you know what you don't like. You know, if you see something you really like, you can say, wow, I should do that in my next painting. I should incorporate those things. Are you really understanding what it is that you're looking at, or do you just like it because it looks good to you? You know, these are the kinds of things I'm talking about in terms of understanding those principles, those concepts. So I know I'm kind of rambling, but if any of this is making sense, that's good. If it's not making sense, then maybe this is kind of what we're actually talking about, because leading lines, for example, if you want someone to look at something, like if you have a subject in your painting, like let's say it's a cabin, you can really help your composition by using other elements of the painting to sort of point at it, like a mountain ridge, right? So if your cabin's here and you have some mountains in the background, if it's just some kind of behind your cabin, that's one thing. But if you got a mountain over here and the ridge is literally leading straight behind the cabin, that's what we call a leading line. Something that, angles, things like that in the composition that point to what you want people to look at. Put more contrast where you want people to look. Put less contrast where it's not as important. Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get that from Bob.
Yeah.
Not directly. If you really look, you might be able to notice him doing it sometimes. And he does incorporate things like this into his compositions. But if you want to strengthen your own compositions, it really helps to understand this stuff. And then when someone who does know what he's looking at, he or she is looking at, then you're like, oh, hey, that person's got it. That person did some research. That person knows, fundamentals of composition, fundamentals of color theory. Color theory. Color theory is really important too. Like you can make, Bob's paintings are mostly blue and green, right? So, complementary colors. Reds complement of green, blues complement of orange. So if you put something in your painting like a bush or whatever that is more, let's say it's leaning toward those colors, or it actually is maybe a bright orange bush right there, right? That draws attention because it's got contrast. It's the complement. It's going to vibrate against the blue and the green in the background. Things like that you're not necessarily thinking about when you watch Bob paint, but it's very subtle. These are subtle touches that you can add to really help your compositions out. Mm-hmm. Things like that.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's see. In your own art, what are some, I can talk today. In your own art, what are some improvements that you think you still need to make?
Oh boy. Aren't we all our own worst critics? That is a big question. I mean, we should all ask ourselves that question, because you need to, okay, how do I say this? You have to understand that you're always going to be learning. You're always growing. You can master something, but you're still, even the master is learning. I learn from my students all the time. It's not that I don't know what I'm talking about. It's not that I don't know how to handle the brush. It's not that I don't know how to paint a tree. But what you learn from that is how other people see things and how other people approach things. And you do it long enough and you begin to figure out different ways people see and different things that people like. And I look up to the masters. I think my favorite artists, Cesar Santos, Andrew Tischler, let's see, John Singer Sargent. No, Tischler and Santos are modern. They make their own videos. You can follow Andrew Tischler's awesome. He's great. I don't think I'm there yet. I'm working on it, but it's the way that he handles. I just really admire the way that he handles his paint, his compositions, his colors, everything. I would say that my own work suffers most from the fact that I don't feel like I'm there yet. And I know this is hard to explain, but we all know what we like, and when we can't quite do it, it can be frustrating. But you can also use it as an indication that you still have room to grow. So what I'd say to that is not to be don't ever be satisfied. Don't ever be satisfied. Even if you really like what you're doing, try to find something wrong with it. Try to find something about it to improve. And this is what I mean. Like, this is a hard question, because I can be satisfied with my work. And then, like I'm looking at a picture I did right now, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, well, if I had to do that all over again, I know what I would do differently. And I would try it and see what happens. If it looks great, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'll move on.
Do you want to show us that picture?
Sure. Hold on. Oh, I don't know how well this is going to come out, but this is a picture. I guess you could call it a portrait of an egret.
A great egret.
It's big, so I can't fit the whole thing. And of course, the color in here is not great, but
it's beautiful.
I sent you a picture of this, so
yes, you did.
What I can do is put it on. I can post it to the group. But yeah. This took me 3 weeks to do this. I did it in 2 layers, about a week, maybe a week and a half per layer, and then I let it dry in between layers for about a month, maybe. And that's the way you paint this. The individual layers are all done, wet into wet, blending everything. But then you let it dry and you go over it with more detail, and then you analyze it and you check it out. It's actually great having a month of not looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if and this is something really, you know, significant that I can point out. If you aim to finish it alla prima, you know, all in one sitting, all in one pass, then it's spontaneous, and there can be benefits to that. You know, that's great. Spontaneous work tends to have more energy, tends to have more life to it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're if you're working on something like that is supposed to be rendered realistically, and it's, you know, the life is in the brushwork and the color and the, you know, the contrast and everything, then when you do your underpainting, you know, your first layer, and you put it away for a month and you don't look at it, when you come back to it, it's like you're seeing it with fresh eyes, and you can instantly see things that are wrong with it. You know, have you ever looked at a painting in a mirror, turned it around backwards, and looked at it, and then said, "Huh, I don't like the way that looks," or whatever, and you flip it back around, and it looks normal again? That's weird, right? It's kind of the same effect, except that putting it away and working on other things is healthy sometimes, because it allows you to see mistakes you made, or maybe improvements that you want to make, which you can make in the next layer. You just paint over it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I usually try to push to my students, is to just be patient. You know, be patient with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Let the work happen.
Yeah.
And just, you know, question everything. You know, do I like this? Do I not like this? What is it about this that I like? What do I not like about it?
Yeah.
That's how you get better.
Yeah. I think patience goes a long way to creating better work.
Mm-hmm. You have to have patience with yourself. It's one of the biggest problems that I see a lot, is people get frustrated too easily. They give up on themselves too easily, and, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, this doesn't look good. How do you do it so well? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, you know, when they ask me that, I don't know what to say, because I've been doing this since I was a kid. I've been drawing since, you know, drafting since I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And really all this is just drawing. You know, this is just drawing with a paintbrush and some color, and it feels different and it works differently. But it like I said before, it took me about a month to figure it out, maybe 2. Mm-hmm. Once I figured it out, I was like, oh, cool, I can do this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so I have some wacky bonus questions for you. Let's see. Okay, bonus question number 1. Is there anything that could happen in your life that would end your career as an artist?
No. Well, I suppose if I couldn't see anymore. I don't know. If I went blind, that'd be pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I asked that question because I think it speaks to, you know, how you feel about art. Because some people are like, oh, I can take it or leave it. I'm guessing that you'd take it.
It's that's who I am. My, you know, if all of a sudden I couldn't, I would, I mean, as long as I can see. Mm-hmm. If I couldn't do it anymore myself, at least I would still be trying to help, like, teach people, help people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's really, it's hard to explain, but it's how my brain's wired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. Question number 2. Would you rather be a poor artist or a rich person with no hobbies?
Oh, a poor artist. I couldn't, having no hobbies, what would I do with all the money? I guess that's kind of a dumb answer, but you gotta have some. No, like I said,
somewhere in between is better.
That's who I am. It's what I am. I consider myself rich in that respect.
That's a tough question to answer. Yeah, right. I think my answer would be I'd rather be poor all day long. Do you have any final thoughts you'd kind of like to share with us before we finish this up?
Oh, I don't know. I don't want to finish. You can keep asking me questions if you want to. I mean, just, I don't know. Ask me some more questions.
Okay, I'll ask you a couple more. Okay. Let's see. What do you think? Oh, no, sorry, not what. How do you think your art has transformed over your career as an artist?
That's a good one. Okay. So in the beginning, I copied everything. I sat there in class drawing Michelangelo and copying Leonardo and copying Raphael. I did this in high school. You know, the first recognition I got for being able to draw was in 2nd grade. My dinosaurs that I drew were hung on the walls, and that was positive, you know, reinforcement. I drew whales and sharks, and everybody loved them. Everybody wanted me to draw for them, so I did. And when I realized soon after that I was really good at that, but I wasn't really good at anything else, I just kept that became my safe place. That became my safe spot. So that's what I really liked to do. And so when I got older and I got, and I understood more about what I was doing, I just naturally progressed into more detail. I copied everything just to practice. I copied Michelangelo's Sistine Ceiling to give you some perspective on that. I just sat there and drew the scenes, literally drew them with pencil. And that was practice. That was practice. I had my first formal art classes at Valencia in Orlando with Anita Wooten, who was she had taught at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. So I got my first taste of real academy training from her. And that was big. Before that, I had been copying, the masters, and I copied some science fiction artists, Frank Frazetta, the fantasy art, dragons and people and things. I copied all that stuff. And that's how I honed my drafting skills. Now, when I finally got to Valencia, it was a whole new thing. We were drawing with one eye closed. We were drawing with our left hand. I'm right-handed. So we were drawing with our left hand. We were drawing with the paper over here and our face in front of it, so we couldn't see what we were doing. We were doing contour lines, and we were using we were training our eyes and our hands to do the same thing, like this. And that was new. That was cool. We'd look at our drawings and be like, what is that, right? But over time, you get better at it. And then she'd make us do that with our left hand. Then when you sit down and you try to draw something, you're looking at it, you're drawing with your dominant hand. It's so much easier. And I thought, holy cow, I never realized that it was like that. I never realized how much more confident you could be after forcing yourself to be uncomfortable for great lengths of time. She'd make us do that the whole class period. But that's how you train yourself. That's how you get better. And it's about confidence in that regard. Knowing that you can sit there and you can put down what you want. It's kind of like just sitting down writing something. You sit down with an idea, you write it out. Maybe you need to do a rough draft or whatever. But if in terms of art, in terms of a painting, for example, your rough draft is your first layer, then you can refine it in the second draft and just paint over it. If you got the colors wrong, if you got the values incorrectly, if you need to move an arm over, if you need to, if your one eyeball's too high and you need to move it down, do it wrong first instead of not doing it at all. That would be the biggest thing that I could point out there. Just if you're not confident and you don't feel like you know what you're doing, just do something. Let it sit there and dry. Let it sit for a month. Come back to it later. Look at it. Take another stab at it. Paint over it. Fix your problems. Move that eyeball up. Move the arm in. Move the shoulder down. Whatever it is. And I'm talking about portraiture, but anything. Maybe it's the apple is too far over to the right or something. I don't know. Those are things that you can train yourself how to do. And in terms of Bob Ross, you just keep going. Just keep going, because you'll eventually get it. And if you're doing something and it doesn't work, try doing it a little bit of a different way, right? If your bushes are coming out like mush, and you go and you put the bushes back up there and they're still like mush, and you keep doing it that way, they're always going to look like mush. But change the way you handle the brush, change the way you load the paint, change something each time you do it, and you'll eventually stumble on the right way to do it. And then you'll be like, oh, that's how it's done, right? That knife was the hardest thing for me to figure out. The mountains, it took me like 2 weeks to figure that out. Mountain after mountain after mountain to figure out how to handle that properly. And it's not that I wasn't doing it right. It's just that I wasn't doing it the way that I wanted it to look. It wasn't coming out. It wasn't satisfying me. I was being told it was good, but I'm like, no, it's not. I can tell, because I'm like, okay, this isn't good enough. I need to keep practicing. That's how I got better. That's how I did it.
Yeah. Awesome. So. Okay. Now, do you have any final thoughts?
I don't know. I've been on a little bit of a hiatus. I haven't really done much of anything in the past year, maybe a little bit more than a year. I moved to Alabama to take a job. Kind of got out of it. I'm getting back into it though. I'm going to start making, I've got my studio set up here. I do audio, by the way. You can see behind me. This is one of my other things that I like to do. But as far as painting goes, before COVID hit, I had started producing a brush line. I got 2 brushes produced before COVID shut everything down. The idea behind that was that I wanted to offer my students a pack of brushes, because the painting style that I do is not specific like Bob. Like Bob's techniques, you have landscape flats, you have fan brush for trees, you have clouds, and everything has its own brush, and it's very systematic and structured like that. But with mine, the way I teach, you kind of just paint with whatever's comfortable. I have recommendations that I made for the lists, but it was to, people get confused when they've got so many options and they're new and they don't know what they're looking at. So my idea was to just give them a set of brushes in the beginning. I could have gone to the store and bought them, but I thought it would be cool to have custom made ones that are specifically designed the way I like to work, that I could just hand to them, when they come to the class, and everybody would be on the same page in that respect, and there would be no confusion about which supplies they need. I don't use a lot of medium. My outlook on painting mediums is that if you don't have to use one, don't use one. You wouldn't bake a cake with random ingredients that you have sitting on your shelf, right? So, the cake has a recipe. So your paintings, I tend to try to treat my paintings the same way. If it's not in the recipe, it's not. I don't need it. A medium is just meant to modify the paint so that you can get an effect, right, that you can't achieve without it. And that's really the only time you should be using a medium. That's just the way I teach it. Now, of course, you can do whatever you want, but I tend to use the cake analogy quite a bit because just because you have all these ingredients doesn't mean you should add them to your mix, right? Because you might mess up the cake. There's a very specific way that cake needs to turn out. And when you understand how to add the ingredients and how long to bake it, what the temperature is, that's how you make that cake, and that's how it's consistently the same every time. And a painting's the same way. Painting has a recipe. It has ingredients. You add the ingredients, you mix it all up, you bake it, right? And then it comes out, and if you follow your recipe, you will be able to paint consistently. And yeah.
Awesome. So bake that cake, right?
Cake. Yeah, I might want one, actually. I might be getting a little hungry right now.
Okay, well, before you go, can you tell us where we can find you?
Well, I'm on Facebook. I'm in your group. My class, I'm in Huntsville. So if anybody's in Huntsville or anyone wants to travel to Huntsville to take a class, like I was saying before, my classes aren't just one shot, though. It's kind of like a returning thing. But I can do it online as well. It's just harder online because I can't see exactly what your colors are, for example. It's difficult online, especially if you don't necessarily have the greatest lighting setup, or your camera or whatever isn't picking up the colors, or the values are off. It's really hard to do it online, but it's not impossible. Not impossible, at least to receive instruction.
And do you also have a YouTube channel?
I do. I have a YouTube channel. Like I said, I haven't done anything to it in over a year, but all of that's winding back up. I'm going to start trying to get back into the brush production. I do have 2 of them ready, but the others, I planned on doing about 5 or 6 of them, and 2020 hit and everything just went downhill. So that kind of got shot down. But eventually, some flats, some filberts, some sables, rounds, detail brushes, blenders, things like that I use. I tend to be very simple in the way that I paint. I only have 5 colors. I have a palette. I have a brush. I don't use my finger. Everything's controlled with the brush. So it's very simple in terms of cost. I don't have a lot of stuff. And I clean my brushes the same way every time. It's funny. People come in and they look at my brushes and they're like, "Do you ever use those?" And of course I do. I just clean them really well, so you can't tell.
Got to take care of them.
I do, and I teach my students how to do that too.
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
There's so much. Oh my gosh, there's so much. If you go from group to group online, there's so much you're going to find. Everybody's got a home remedy, right? It's difficult if you're a beginner and you're searching through Facebook groups and other online outlets trying to figure out how to paint. It really helps to have somebody who knows what XYZ is and what it means. If there's one thing I can encourage every beginner to do, it's to have a sense of motivation to learn about the materials that we're using, how the paint's made, how mediums integrate, because mediums and paint are basically made with the same thing. How to extend it if you need it to be, basic things, how to clean your brushes, stuff like that. Just be inquisitive, be interested, learn. You wouldn't go to a job and just go and push the buttons and come home. At least I wouldn't. I have to know how things work. It helps. It really helps to know how things work, because then when you have issues, it's 10 times easier to figure out how to solve them.
Yeah. Awesome. David, thank you so much for coming on. This has been really informative. I appreciate you taking your time to come on and chat with me. And just thank you. a great artist. Somebody else told me about you and said you have to see his work. And
I appreciate that. Yeah. Anytime if you want to have me back, we can do this again.
Absolutely, absolutely. I definitely will. So again, thank you for coming on. Make sure that you guys, I will put links in the description as to where you can find him. So make sure you go find him. And he's got a lot of really good information, even though a lot of your stuff is stuff that you haven't touched for a while. It's still, I've watched a lot of your videos, just very interesting stuff. So
yeah, it's all there, and I'm willing to help. So if anybody has any questions, just hit me up on the Facebook group, or I'm in a few of them actually. But I tend to be very available because I keep a close eye on things. I don't post a lot of my personal work because it's not really appropriate, but that's why a lot of people are like, oh, I haven't seen much of your stuff. Because I do have the raw stuff, and I have animals, and I have whatever, but some of it's personal, and I probably won't ever show that stuff. But that's okay.
That's okay. That's absolutely okay. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions or comments, put it in the comment section of the video and we'll do our best to address them. Again, I'm Gabby and this is David. Thank you for coming on. Make sure you guys find him, like, share, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. And until next time, I really do hope that you guys fall in love with oil painting just as much as we have. Bye, guys.